Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Deborah Garlick from Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace and Menopause Friendly Accreditation. And today's session is all about menopause and cancer. And to be clear, this isn't from a medical perspective. I'm delighted that we have the opportunity of welcoming back Antonia de Gier from Hormone Health, who has recently experienced menopause and cancer. And of course is a registered nutritionalist, and we were talking a lot about what we can do through nutrition to support us during menopause and cancer and getting back to full strength. I think that's about the right way to say it, isn't it, Antonia?
Yes, it is, Deborah. And thank you very much for having me on again. I'm delighted to be here. I think slightly more emotive subject than perhaps I talked about last year, but very, very important. And I'm really delighted to be able to talk to you today.
Well, I know it's under, as you say, it's not like the last session you joined us on when we were talking about nutrition during menopause. You've had a personal experience that's made this even more prominent for you to be talking about. Would you be happy to share your experience?
Absolutely, I would. And I have to say, I consider myself very fortunate. I think I have, touch wood, got off lightly compared to a lot of others. But nevertheless, it was a very, very stressful experience. I had 6 months of diagnosis, a couple of operations, and radiotherapy. And I think one of the things that we're going to talk about today is what we call the double whammy of obviously suddenly having to come off HRT, which I had really enjoyed being on, and then going on anti-estrogen medication. And that's quite a shock to the system. So I'm not really going to talk that much today about diagnosis and actual treatment, because as you said, we're not coming from a medical point of view. And I must say personally, I am not qualified to help people during cancer treatment. That's a very special area. But what I can do is help people afterwards and in the aftermath. But I do think it's really important to say the psychological and the physical impact of having a diagnosis and then going through all the treatment, whether that is operations or chemotherapy, radiotherapy. It's a massive hit on stress levels, obviously, the immune system. You're dealing with anesthetics, you're dealing with some pretty strong drugs. There are a lot of contraindications as to what you can take during treatment and what you can't. And it's very important to speak to your oncology team during that time. Make sure you are on the right track and you're not taking anything that may interfere. Digestive health takes quite a hit as well, obviously, because of the stress and all the strong medications. So there's an awful lot to deal with, not only during the whole diagnosis and treatment, but actually afterwards as well. I think that's a really tough time as well.
Absolutely. And I'm really delighted that you raised that, you know, it's a conversation with an oncologist. If you are thinking of going down the medical route, or if you are doing anything from the, it's got to be including, because that is really, really specialist, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, even just small things like not being able to have too many antioxidants in your cream, for example. If you're having radiotherapy, you know, you can't have anything with vitamin A, vitamin C. And these are the things that are quite often missed. So I mean, we're talking primarily about breast cancer, but obviously this really includes any form of cancer. But I think, you know, because we're talking about perhaps what sends you into an early menopause or an immediate menopause, it is primarily breast cancer. But anyone going through radiotherapy, chemotherapy, taking strong medication, I cannot recommend the breast cancer nurses highly enough. I mean, the oncology team are fantastic, but the nurses are absolutely there to help you with any small question that you have.
And you just mentioned something that sort of made me think, really? You know, what you put on your skin, your vitamin A, anything, you know, any of that's a retinol.
Yes.
Many of
Yeah,
us do
exactly.
use that and probably use it routinely.
Yeah.
All of those things have to be stripped out.
That's it. That's it. So you've just got to really be aware on top of everything else that you're dealing with. But check with them. They will be able to help you with what you can use, what you can't use. So as you know, Deborah, I'm all about the food first. But I'm an advocate for supplements. But again, not during your treatment. You need to make sure that you're getting all the goodness that you can from your food. And then afterwards, you can take a look at maybe what you're lacking, what you might want to add into your diet.
And as you say, the reason that we're so passionate about people talking about this more is that double whammy.
Yeah.
The sort of the things that are available to so many of us. I've been on HRT for 15 years, and when you said to me I had to come off my HRT, I was thinking, oh, gosh, goodness knows what would happen with my brain fog if I did that right now.
Yeah.
And because it's not just the physical symptoms, is it, that you need to find treatment for? For me, it is the
Absolutely.
psychological symptoms, and I know HRT works, but when you've had that diagnosis and you're under the care, and even beyond that, you have to be very, very careful what you take. So if you like, the menu of options is much reduced.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly. And I think, again, it's the psychological and the physical impact. So, if we're all sort of merrily going along, I mean, HRT, of course, is a choice. I think if you can take it, brilliant, and it suits you, it can do absolute wonders. And I'm a huge advocate for HRT. But there are many, many women, as we know, who can't take it or who choose not to take it. So I think it's really important to look at those positive aspects as well as of what we can do if we can't take HRT. And I think, again, the psychological aspect, we're suddenly told to come off it. I mean, it's quite important to come off it gradually, but take your advice from your healthcare professionals. But you are going through all of this trauma, basically, and then coming off your HRT. And then, depending on whether you start on your medication first, when you have your radiotherapy, for example, or the other way around, it's a double whammy. You're not getting the relief of your symptoms from the HRT. And effectively, we're just trying to stop. If it's an estrogen-fed cancer, we're trying to stop any estrogen circulating in the body. So suddenly you've gone from up here to down here with not much estrogen if we're doing the right thing. So it's pretty tough, pretty tough.
It's pretty tough. So one of the things that when we talked about this before that made me think, oh, actually, we do need to get this to everyone is actually food. Our
Food,
nutrition can
absolutely.
actually make quite a difference. So what did you do? What made a difference to you? And I am conscious that this is something that you're highly qualified in.
Well,
To say from
yes,
a
but
nutrition.
honestly, Deborah, I was quite shocked at the beginning, and I found it quite difficult so I knew everything I should be doing. I'll be really honest. I found it very difficult to actually implement that. And I think, let's face it, when we're in a high stress situation, we all want sugar, don't we? Or nothing at all. And so that, I would say, that sort of took a month to really try and fit in that actually I do need to really take care of my own diet, on top of obviously trying to help other people. And I think I'm not really telling you anything new here that maybe I didn't tell you last year, but it's all relative. We need to get the good stuff in. We need to get the rubbish out. I think the most important thing I would say to start with is be kind to yourself. It is a hugely stressful time. All our systems are going crazy, as I said. Stress hormones, obviously reproductive hormones, because we're losing those very rapidly. Our digestive health, our immune system, our liver, because we're trying to process all of these medications. So I think we need to look at a very holistic approach. And as always, the golden rule is protein with every meal. I hate to say it, but obesity is a factor, particularly in breast cancer. And the first thing that we can do for that is to try and balance our blood sugar levels. And we can do that. The easiest way we can do that is by getting protein into every meal. And by that, I'm talking about lean meat. We need to watch how much red meat we consume. Eggs, fish, as always, and then the vegetarian options as well, lentils, beans, etc. That's the most important thing. And then I think we really want to look at getting our saturated fat down. So that's our processed fat. That is our red meat. Dairy is a bit of a controversial one. I'll talk about that in a minute. But saturated fat does have an impact on estrogen levels. So if there is any estrogen circulating, then that can be reabsorbed into the blood. So we really want to look at getting rid of our biscuits, cakes, all of those sort of processed foods. And we want to get in the good fats. That's the omega-3, that's our oily fish, our nuts, our seeds, olive oil, avocado. These also have an anti-inflammatory effect, and that is also really helpful in a cancer diagnosis. We want to be trying to manage our blood sugar and bring any inflammation down. So I think most people know that if you have a blood sugar spike, then the insulin has to work really hard to deal with that sugar in the blood. And a lot of insulin in the blood can lead to inflammation in the blood, and this can lead to a malignancy, you know, a growth of cells that we don't want. So that, I would say, is the most important part of it. Try and cut the sugar, try and bring the saturated fat down, have the odd steak, have the odd piece of good quality red meat sort of once a week. Try and have a couple of vegetarian days in the week, but really think about getting your whole foods in.
When you say vegetarian, I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat meat, but what sort of protein is there in vegetarian food? Because I feel for vegetarians and vegans for that matter.
Well, so do I. I feel for them too, and particularly, as I say, let's quickly talk about dairy, because that's quite a controversial one. So some people say absolutely no dairy. It can have inflammatory properties. Some people say, well, you need dairy for your calcium levels, because as we know, bone density is an issue. If we're not having HRT and we're not having any estrogen, it can affect our bone density. And that's another big problem for women post-menopause or post-cancer treatment. But you can get your calcium in your nuts, in your seeds, in beans, in root vegetables. So there are alternatives. From a personal point of view, I love my cheese, for example. But so I don't have milk, I don't have dairy yogurt, I have dairy alternative, but I do have the odd slice of cheese. And I think it's all about finding your balance. What is going to work for you? I think, as I said to you earlier, sorry, I've gone off, I'll go back to vegetarian. It's a very personal situation, and I really admire the people who can just cut everything out of their diet. If they can cut out wine, they can cut out sugar, they can cut out saturated fat. But I think we've also got to be realistic, and we've got to find the balance and what is going to work long term. As we know, it's not about quick fixes. None of this is about quick fixes. It's about finding your new normal and what is going to work for you in real life, because we want to enjoy life. I consider it, we get a second chance. So let's try and enjoy it. But just apologies, to go back to the vegetarian, vegan is really difficult, let's face it. But there are protein alternatives. So you've got lentils, beans, nuts and seeds again, eggs if you take eggs, and tofu, is another example. There are a lot of vegan alternatives now, but I think I still feel real food is always best, where we know where it's come from.
Well, when you say alternatives, you mean some of the, I mean, I saw something the other day and I didn't realize it was vegan. It was, it looked like it was a chicken burger.
Yeah,
But I was like, how, you know, my brain went poof. I don't
yeah.
actually don't know what that is then if it's not a chicken.
No, no,
So
exactly. I think corn, corn has been around long enough and we all know that's okay. But there are a lot of new ones now. And I think, funnily enough, people are starting to realize that actually they're better to try and have real food, whole food.
whole food. But as you say, it's not just about how you might manage your symptoms.
No,
For those that come off HRT or for those that decide they don't want to take it anyway, it's also about the long term. You know, I mean, and this is, you're talking about long-term changes to the diet. And
absolutely.
actually this can happen very, very, very quickly. And it takes your body time to stop, for those cravings to stop, particularly when you are in such a high stress environment, you know, such a
Absolutely.
situation. You might think,
Yeah,
at this point, this is where I'd usually be reaching for a Mars bar.
exactly. And if that happens, as I say, be kind to yourself. That's okay. We're hopefully going to have plenty of time to reevaluate. But let's face it, all of us probably want just a cup of tea and a cake when we're in that situation and can't really face much more than that. I think one step at a time. And I think post treatment is really a good time to then sit down, tackle that diet. Everybody knows themselves what they maybe are eating or drinking too much of, what they maybe could cut out, what they can reduce. But again, get the good stuff in. It's really easy to take out the rubbish once you've got the foundations in place. So just looking at the liver, the digestive system, the immune system, let's remember our fiber. Let's remember insoluble and soluble fiber. We want to be eliminating any old, circulating, unwanted hormones. So that's the job of the liver and the digestive tract. So we're wanting to have whole grains. We're wanting to have as much fruit and vegetables as we can get in. The brassica vegetables, so that's the broccoli and the cauliflower, and then your green veg like kale, beans, etc., are absolutely fantastic. And we don't want to be constipated either. That's another horrible after effect of treatment, and then perhaps being on medication, and that can just make you feel awful. So we want to be getting things moving, going through the system. And then once we've got those good foundations in place, so good quality protein, slow releasing carbohydrates, our whole grains, our fruit, our vegetables, and our good fats, our oily fish, our nuts, seeds, avocado, we're doing really, really well with that.
Fabulous. Okay, and I get you in terms of making those changes, but also hopefully life's for a long time. And
Exactly.
this is also about how we build our strength and our habits, isn't it?
That's it.
With
That's
what we
it.
eat.
Strength and habits. And I think, as I just was saying to you and Michelle earlier, I think I'm a great believer in choose your treat, for want of a better word. I mean, I can't. One of my really I really enjoyed reading Julia Bradbury's book, who has been through breast cancer, and she writes a very simple book on getting back to health, nature, and she has stopped drinking completely, for example, and I really admire her for that. But I love a glass of wine. So again, it's just, don't have it every day. If you've overindulged, have a few days off. But I'd rather have a glass of red wine than chocolate, if I'm honest. But sometimes I want the chocolate too. So then have dark chocolate. It's about being, because you don't want to live your life feeling restricted all the time. That's not what it's about. I think it's, you want to enjoy yourself as well, and you want to be able to celebrate.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I'm hearing from you then is protein with every meal.
Yeah,
And lots of alternatives there. I like an egg in the morning.
yeah.
And
Nut butters are a brilliant start to the morning. On a couple of oat cakes, for example, Ryvita, that sort of thing. If you don't want to have eggs every day, then that's also really good. Good
really
start.
good. Lots of vegetables, and
Yeah.
look for those ones that have got calcium in them.
Yes, and also, as I say, the brassica vegetables, so that's broccoli, cauliflower, also, our onions, garlic, all of these things are really good for our digestive health as well. So our pre and our probiotics, so getting that digestive system moving, boosting your immune system as well. I think vitamin D is another really important one for the immune system. And vitamin D can help to kill off those unhealthy cells. So the ones that we don't want, vitamin D is really important. That can be found in eggs, oily fish, fortified cereals. Just check the sugar content, but there are some good ones out there. And daily sunshine. Whilst we're talking about vitamin D, really difficult in this country from October to March to have enough dietary vitamin D. And again, I'm talking about post-treatment. But I think, again, our lovely Duchess of Cambridge and Julia Bradbury really got it right when they said, get outside, get into nature, enjoy it. If you can get out as early as possible, get the light into your eyes, even 10 minutes. 10 minutes works. And that can just help to boost your vitamin D levels, your serotonin levels, so it makes you feel a bit happier. Then that is all very positive.
Wonderful. And yes, I think in the UK, our recommended daily is 4,000
IU. Yeah, that's right.
Which seems huge, actually, when you look on the back of the packets. But as
Yeah.
you say, check in before you start taking anything.
But I mean, I do find it incredible in this country. We don't get much sun. And in Switzerland, for example, they automatically give babies a vitamin D injection. But we don't do that. But again, check with your healthcare professional that you're okay with what you're taking.
Wonderful. I'll invite Michelle, who's been looking at questions in the background. Michelle.
Quite a lot coming on. So we'll deal with the quicker ones first. People hearing that they shouldn't use eggs because there's estrogen in them and they've had estrogen receptive breast cancer. Is that correct?
I personally have not heard that. I think I've got a couple of controversial areas that I had here that we've only managed to talk about dairy. What the big reminder with eggs is they do contain lecithin, and lecithin is very good at binding out your cholesterol, for example, getting your unwanted substances out of the body. So in that respect, they can help. But as I say, I would check with a cancer specialist. And if they're given that advice, then that's the advice to take.
Absolutely. Soy.
Yes, soy is
on my headlines.
A big one, and it's in my list of controversies as well. What you've got to be careful of is the soya isolate. So you need to check the kind of soya that you're eating. Now, in terms of tofu, chickpeas, lentils, they are okay because what they are actually are phytoestrogens. Now that means they are plant estrogens. So they mimic the real estrogens, but what they actually do is lock on to your estrogen receptors. So they are actually a good thing. But again, double check with your specialist.
And particularly as well, talking about, some people have been talking about other medication, because often we're put on blood pressure medication, we may be put on heart medication, we might be put on calcium infusions, so it's really important that we do have those conversations. And we know things like
Absolutely.
tamoxifen can affect skin. You were talking about creams and things. And
Yeah.
I can remember making the mistake of going for my radiotherapy, having not removed my moisturizer, and I've never known pain like it.
No,
It was
exactly.
something else.
The skin is
if you
so
do,
delicate if you're going through radiotherapy, so you really have to watch that.
Yeah. Interesting point about post-treatment. You know, we don't really get much follow-on from an endocrine specialist or a nutritionist. That aftercare, I personally found, I thought, was the biggest chasm that I probably fell down. So yeah.
And again, Michelle, that
what
was one
can
of
we do?
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to mention. I totally agree with you. I think when you're in the system, as it were, and you've got all that support from your oncologist, your operation team, the breast cancer nurses, etc., and then you're basically told, okay, all good, and you're on the medication, and off you go. I think really, really important to keep a good oncologist. I swapped mine retired. I got a new one and I thought, oh, I'm fine. I'm getting on with it. And actually it was really, really good to just have a check-in with him a year on, talk to him about everything that was going on. That's very helpful. I think friends and family, particularly during treatment, they feel so helpless and they want to help. And I think let them help, talk. You need that support. Don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, I'm absolutely fine now, and keep going. That, I agree with you, I think is the precise time that you do need that more support. I think a lasagna is absolutely fantastic if you can't cook, but actually what you want is, and you want that laughter and fun from your girlfriends, let's face it, husbands, partners, they're absolutely wonderful. I think for those of us who have children, we spend so much time making sure that they're okay. We need our girlfriends, and we need a good laugh. I think it's really important. Get them on those early in the morning.
Oh, I do. I live for mine. When we're talking about dairy, obviously there's lots of options now, particularly around sheep and goat, and live dairy versus pasteurized and all of those things. Is it best to just try and, if it's causing you an issue, just move away? Because it's always difficult, isn't it?
Yes, if you're not, as I say, I think the really big aspect of it is we worry that we're not getting our calcium. And again, that's important for the bone density, etc. So if you can't find a sort of a decent dairy alternative that you're not happy with, then, as I said, nuts, seeds, beans, pulses, root vegetables, carrots, turnips, parsnips, really important as well.
Okay, and just one last thing, because we all know when we're going through it, putting one foot in front of the other is quite the challenge. So it is, a lot of people are saying they're finding it really challenging when people are saying, get moving. One way of managing sugar spikes is going for a walk after dinner, and all of those things. So I think the whole thing you're saying is little steps, literally small steps.
I can remember after my surgery waiting for my daughter to come home, and I think we literally went for a 15-minute walk, sat down in the park and came back again, and it was the best thing to have done. And that's what I mean, be kind to yourself. You can't always face it. You can't start a mega organic diet straight away, no sugar, no alcohol, no coffee, whatever you enjoy. It's just not realistic. So give yourself time, be kind to yourself, and just even 5 minutes sitting in the garden will help, and then take it to a walk. I think it's really traumatic, stressful time. And as we said, Michelle, it's not a club that we want to be in, but it's a very special, supportive club. And I think that's what we need to remember.
Thank you both very, very much, as are the comments in chat. It's always great to see the Henpicked community supporting each other and asking lots and lots of questions. And thank you very much, both Antonia and Michelle, for sharing your personal experience on this one. There has been quite a conversation about bones and vitamin D in the chat, and I am delighted to say our next Lunch and Learn is on bone health. And there was a question about bovine collagen. But I don't know if you've got any comments to make on that one, Antonia, from a nutrition perspective.
No, I would have to do a bit more research on that one, I have to say.
Yes, well, we'll be putting that one to Dr. Bill when she joins us at the beginning of November. But I'm really grateful to you for sharing and supporting this session today, because, as we said right at the beginning, people do need extra support during this
Yeah.
time, and it's often those that are struggling to recover post-menopause and cancer that don't have the same sort of options. So it's great that people are supporting each other on this session today. So thank you both very, very much, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Deborah.